Hi, and welcome to ThreatTraq Essentials, where we'll take a look at some everyday cybersecurity lessons that we can learn from this week's ThreatTraq stories. I'm here with Andy Benavides, and we're going to talk about some of the stories on today's show. First of all, Stan Nurlov brought us a story about Lilu Ransomware. Tell me what that is and what it does.
Sure. So ransomware is a type of malware that will encrypt your files, and then it will present a screen to you, to the user, instructing you to pay Bitcoin to a certain wallet in order to obtain a key that would then decrypt all of your files.
And encryption is really just locking them all up so you don't have access to them.
Essentially, it jumbles all the data so you can't really read them. They're useless to you until you can undo that encryption.
Now this story is a little unusual because of the kinds of machines that are being infected with it. Tell me about that.
Correct. So usually in the past, we've seen ransomware target Windows machines, more like laptops and desktops. Not necessarily any sort of Linux or Mac OS type machines. And in particular, we don't really see it with servers. In this case, though, the Lilu ransomware is actually targeting not just Linux machines, but Linux servers in particular. So what that means is it's actually encrypting files pertaining to like websites and whatnot.
So those websites go down when they get encrypted, right? You lose access to
Absolutely. We're visiting a page. That page is a file, essentially, and that file needs to be served by other files. So if all those files are encrypted and unreadable, then the website itself is unreadable and unusable.
So whether or not you host a website or not, what advice can we give people to protect themselves against ransomware?
This one's a little bit tough. It's a little bit it's unclear exactly how this ransomware is getting onto machines. So I think the boilerplate advice of typical security applies here, which is going to be, make sure that all of your everything's up to date. When you are actually creating a website, you're using different packages and different libraries. Those libraries have versions, and each library could have vulnerabilities that have been announced. So you want to make sure that everything that you're using is up to date, so that if someone tries to attack your website with ransomware, hopefully you're up to date, and that update will prevent it from...
We tell people every week to update their software, and we're usually talking about mobile devices or laptops, but in this case we're saying update all your software and all the components on a website if you have a website that you host.
Correct, yes.
So let's talk about the story Mike Klepper brought to us. That was about Windows Bits and how it was stealing data.
Right.
So what is Windows Bits?
Windows Bits stands for Background Intelligence Transfer Service. So what it does essentially is it uses your computer's network downtime, so to speak. So when your computer isn't doing anything, which is most of the time when you're not on the computer but it is powered on, the bit service becomes active, and what it does is it actually updates different parts of your computer. So it'll update programs, it'll update the operating system if it can, different things.
So it's meant to do something good, but it's being exploited for something bad?
Correct. It's meant to be very helpful, and it's meant to be very, shall we say, uninvasive, right? You're not supposed to be able to see it. It's supposed to happen in the background. So if somebody figured out that they can use that service to exfiltrate data, which basically means take information on that machine and send it off to wherever they'd like. And they're doing it with that bit service, which means it's likely happening when you're not in front of your computer.
So you can be totally unaware that this is happening.
Right.
Yeah. So what advice can we give people to protect themselves from this?
I'd say the biggest advice I can give is make sure that any sort of security software you have installed on your machine, which you should have some sort of antivirus, something of the like, make sure that's up to date, because this is a known issue and it should be picked up.
And lastly, you brought us a story about Gootkit, which is a banking Trojan, correct?
Yes.
Tell me, what is a banking Trojan?
So a banking Trojan it's software, it's malware designed to steal your banking credentials. So this particular brand, actually, once it gets installed on your machine, it does that with a number of different ways. It can record your screen, so it can see what it is you're typing in, where you're going, but then it can also redirect you to fake banking pages that an attacker has set up, so that when you enter your credentials, you're actually giving it to the bad guy.
So you may think you're at your bank's website, but you're really at the bad guy's website.
Yeah, and oftentimes those fake websites can look very convincing, even down to having even down to using HTTPS, meaning it has a little green padlock. So even that's not sometimes an indication that it's okay.
So that green padlock that you've been told, like, oh, that means it's a safe site. That doesn't necessarily mean the site is safe. It just means that the data going back and forth between you and them is being encrypted.
Correct. It means the data going back and forth is being encrypted, and it means the website that you asked for is the website it gave you. You just don't know that you actually asked for a bad website.
So that's what Banking Trojans do. Just tell me a little bit about that.
So most malware tries to evade detection in one way or another. The way this one does it is actually attacks Windows Defender directly. So Windows Defender is an antivirus product that comes on Windows machines. It's gotten a lot better in recent years. But what this malware does actually is it utilizes something called the FODHelper.exe, which is this little program. It's a management tool introduced into Windows 10 that runs basically with elevated privileges. So it can do things kind of on its own that maybe it shouldn't be able to do. So one of the things that it does or one of the things that you can do with it is you can actually get it to run something for you, and it'll run as an administrator, but it doesn't actually prompt you for anything. So typically when something wants to run as admin,
They usually ask you.
you get asked as the user, and you'll see the little box come up and it'll ask you, hey, so-and-so program is trying to make these changes, are you okay with that? And what this is able to do is it can bypass that altogether. So it'll happen in the background and you don't know about it.
And it has access to everything
Yeah.
on the machine.
Yeah, and so what it's actually doing is it's adding whatever folder the malware is sitting in, it's adding that folder to the exclusion list. So when Windows Defender goes in to actually scan your computer, it references this list of things that it shouldn't scan, and then the malware
So
includes itself.
it's hidden from being scanned for
Correct.
malware, so
Correct.
there's a danger there. So
Yeah.
what do people do in that case? How do they stay safe?
So the key to this is that you have to be a local administrator. So if you don't need to be a local administrator, don't be a local administrator. That would stop this attack in its
On
tracks.
your device, on a computer.
On your computer, especially with a family machine with multiple accounts.
So when you set up, just say you have a computer, you set up one for you, an account for you, for your kids, and other people in the house. There should really only be one that's an administrator. No one else needs to be an administrator on the machine.
Right, right. And whoever is the administrator should more or less know what they're doing with computers.
That's always great advice.
Yeah.
Really. Well, listen, thanks for being on the show this week, Andy, and thank you for watching. As always, you can click on the playlist below to take a deeper dive into any of these stories. And we'll see you next time.